work and
You see? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to get going now with our artist presentation and the interview part of the day. Very excited to see you all at work. So again, we are honored to have Shimoda Emanuel as well as Laura Gadsden, two doll artists from the exhibit. We have a couple other artists, the curator Camilla Bryce Laporte and also Kabibi Ajanku, who have joined us. And I'm going to let Laura and Shimoda take it away. They're each going to talk about their work for about 15 minutes or so. And then after that, we will have our interview / conversation. Okay.
I'm Shimoda Emanuel, and so I am a mixed media artist. Well, most people know me as a jewelry designer, which I use semi-precious stones, pearls, all kind of beads. So I do have a presentation. The beginning. So when I was my mother taught me how to do art, crocheting, knitting, embroidery. So this was a jean jacket that I did in high school, and I did embroidery, and this was during the time of graffiti, and so people would give me their names on their jeans or on their jackets, and so I would do that for them. I would hand embroider this, and so on their jeans, on their legs, they would have their name in graffiti style, and I would just do the embroidery. And I'm sorry I don't have any pictures of those. Then sometimes I would take artwork from books and transpose it onto clothing. Like this was on a shirt, this was on on overalls, and then I would do the embroidery, which I love, but of course it's very takes a lot of time, but I just love it, and I love colors. Also in high school, I was a flautist, and so really, when I was graduating, I wanted to get into New England Conservatory. I was looking to study the flute, and on Saturdays during high school, I lived in Queens, New York. I would go, me and my friends would go to jazzmobile classes in Harlem. So every Saturday we'd go to Harlem, take jazz classes. So really I was looking forward to being a jazz musician. I did study classical music also. And growing up, my dad loved opera, classical. We loved all kind of music, calypso, everything. And so on Saturdays he would listen to opera, and I couldn't stand it. It wasn't until in 10th grade, learned how to play the flute, we started playing classical music. Then that's when I fell in love with classical music. And then once I went to college, my parents told me, you want a good job with pension, health benefits, that type of thing. So me being a dutiful daughter, it's like, okay. They said, why don't you study computers? This is when computers were new. So Brew College, which is on 23rd Street, that was a business college, and so I went there to learn computer science. And I went to the computer department and volunteered in the computer department and realized I do not like this at all. And so they did have a music department, so I was always in the music department. And I just knew college, for me, I just didn't want to go there anymore. So I got a job, immediately got a job. I'm good for getting jobs. And worked at Barnes & Noble bookstore, which was on 18th and 5th. And I consider that my schooling, because I got to read everything that I wanted to read. And most of my paycheck went to Barnes & Noble because we got 40% off. And I just, love books. So that's that. And then I got into jewelry when I was working at Barnes & Noble. Oh, so working at Barnes & Noble on 14th Street, then you have the Village, And so there was a lot of jazz clubs. So my friends who also played, we would go downtown, go to the jazz after working, go eat, go to jazz clubs and hang out there. But also I was part of an orchestra also at Henry Street.
Settlement?
Settlement, yeah. I was part of the orchestra. So then later on, while I'm still working, I'm going home, and at that time I was living in Queens. Going home, and a voice said, "You want to learn how to make jewelry?" And it wasn't like I saw anything in the store, it's just I heard the voice. So I just said, okay, and the next day going to work, I see a girlfriend of mine who I hadn't seen in a long time. And I said, "Oh, Monifa," and she makes jewelry. I said, "Oh, Monifa, I want to learn how to make jewelry. Where do I go? How do I do that?" And she said, "I'm looking for an apprentice. I'll teach you." And so that's how the jewelry got started. And then later on, she got, she had a gallery in her brownstone, and I was able to have my jewelry in her brownstone, part of the gallery. These are some pieces. I do have the bracelet here, so you know if you want to see it. This is a technique called peyote stitch, and it has pearls at the end. And these are really long, like the earrings that I'm wearing. And I like making unique, unusual jewelry. Like these here are necklaces, and the masks, these are wooden masks that I've gotten from the African traders. I live in Harlem now, so there's a lot of African traders that are in Harlem. They were selling beads and all kind of things. So what I did, I would paint them, paint the faces, and then drill holes in it, and then incorporate the beading and the pearls. I like using pearls because normally, for me, pearls, you just think of white pearls, and that's it. But I wanted to zhuzh it up, and you would never think pearls with an African mask. So I did that. I incorporate feathers. I paint on the feathers, incorporate that. Yeah, I have fish vertebrae. So I'm always using unique things, items. This is a wrap necklace. It's one necklace that's on wire, and it wraps around, and that's what this is. So it's one piece, and you just wrap it around. And then this here, one year I went to Senegal, and so I had, what I bought in Senegal was these long strand of fish vertebrae, and these were huge fish because the beads were like this, the vertebrae was like this size. So I incorporate that, the large cowrie shells that I had gotten there. So anytime I traveled, I used what I bought in my travels. This is also pearls. This one, actually, I believe, oh God, I forgot it.
From where?
Well, Carol's daughter, the woman that started
Lisa.
Carol, Lisa have brought my jewelry. So I believe this is Lisa's necklace here. And then also here I incorporate other artists' artwork. This is a phenomenal artist, Marvin Sin, who does wonderful leather work. And normally he makes bags. And beautiful, Laura has
I have a piece, yeah, and wear it today.
So he had these. He sells here. He lives, I believe, North Carolina, and he comes to Harlem and sells.
And I think he's from Harlem.
Yeah, I think he is.
I think he's from Harlem. He's a native New Yorker.
Mm-hmm. So he had these at his booth that I believe he was going to make into something, but he just didn't yet.
Keychains.
The keychains, and so I decided just to buy it and to make a necklace out of it.
I was lucky enough to get one. Yeah.
And then this is a bracelet, a wrap bracelet, which is on wire and it wraps around. And then this is a bracelet also that has a clasp on it. These are various pearls, triple strand bracelets, one bracelet. And I like doing dangles, having beads dangle. Oh, also I want to show here, this here is one of the masks that was painted. the African mask and these bronze colored pearls. And then in the back, I have something hanging in the back, something for the owner. A little secret artwork for the owner.
I know about the secret.
And these are pins, large pins that you can wear on large coats, shawls. If you have a skirt or something, you could pin it here.
And how do the pins come about?
How did the pins come about? How did they come about?
Your excursion into fiber.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, I got into fiber. Now I'm morphing into fiber. Before I was just doing beading, making jewelry, but then I morphed into fiber. I was inspired by some of the DC artists in this show, Francine Haskins. I was doing, taking her classes. Phenomenal James Brown, who is a phenomenal fiber artist in DC. I was learning felting with him. So DC has phenomenal artists. So that's how I got into that. And these pins are also, I also have jewelry in the African American Museum in DC. And so they have some of these pins there. These are other pins that I have. Now, Essence. So I was working at Barnes & Noble, as you know. Then my parents, again, I worked there for 7 years. My parents said, you need a regular job. You need a real job with a pension and health benefits. It's like, okay. So my parents, my mother worked in the school system, and my father worked at the post office, and he retired. He was there for 40 years. So, getting a city job, you have to take a test. So I took a test and did well, and then you get calls. I got letters, calls to come in for an interview. So I go for an interview, and mine was, I think the title was office aide. So I went for the interview, and I didn't know that different agencies get your test results and that different agencies will contact you. I'm thinking like, okay, I got a call from this one agency, and so they interviewed me and I got the job. So I just thought it was just that one thing, not knowing that I could have had options. So this job was in jail. I worked on Rikers Island. So I worked in the office. I wasn't a correction officer. And so what I did was input inmates' information in the system, court dates, bail, and answer phone calls. And I hated it, but you know, that's my city job. So, and I did take another test and, you know, got an interview for another agency. But it was the police department, and that would be a 911 operator. I just felt like, well, why would I do that? So I stuck with corrections and realized, you know, I'm still doing my art, I'm still playing the flute, I'm still making the jewelry, you know, and a full-time job. So it was a lot, and my cousin, who is an artist also, she says, why don't you leave the job? And, you know, that's scary. You get a paycheck, and you got your benefits, and, you know, everything. And but I would read books while I worked there. I would still, while I have a regular paycheck, save my money, buy supplies, because even though it's scary, I still was entertaining the thought and preparing myself to leave the job, just in case I decide to leave the job. One of the correction officers says, you know what, you can get leave of absence, where I'll take a leave for a year and I don't get paid, but you know, I can see what it's like. So I liked that idea, and he helped me do the paperwork. And by that time, you know, I was then going with my husband at the time, who I wasn't married to yet. And so I put in the paperwork. Then my husband and my girlfriend was a stylist. So she would go to different magazines and show people's work, my jewelry, what have you. So during that time, I had gotten married, and I I got married, went on the honeymoon, came home, going through the mail, and there's a letter from Department of Corrections. I opened it, and it says, your leave has been denied. So now what do I do? And I showed it to my husband, and he says, you know what? You wanted to leave. So I had his support. And also, at the same time, I get the cover of Essence magazine. So it's like everything worked out. Here, Naomi Campbell, she's wearing earrings and bracelets here. Here we have Jada, and she's wearing earrings. And then we have this other model wearing bracelets and earrings. And then I have other Essence, inside the magazine, I have other showing the other actress wearing my work.
And then you had your work on the Cosby Show.
Yeah, my work was on the Cosby Show and somewhere else. Goddesses, now we go on to my dolls, which I call goddesses. And this one is actually here. And how did I get with goddesses? I bet because, again, taking Francine's class, Francine Haskins, and she did dolls. And so I decided that, I was taking a leave of absence. No, not a leave of absence. I was traveling, doing different shows with another artist, Sawadi, who makes clothes. So we would do Essence Music Festival, we would do the New Orleans Jazz Festival, we would just travel and sell. And then I had gotten burnt out because we was doing that for a couple of years, and it takes a lot. It looks like it's fun, it is fun, and it takes a lot of energy. So I got burnt out and just sat home and just started getting back into doing that and sewing. And that's
Didn't you make the doll book was your first book?
yeah. So with the dolls, I noticed with myself, I'll get excited about a piece of art that I'm doing, and then do it, and then stop and go on to something else. So this, I decided with the dolls, I said, just make 12. Just make 12 dolls, and then you can stop if you want to stop. So I did that, and I said I was going to do a book, and I finally did a book. It took like 10 years to do the book, because I just kept saying I was going to do it. So this is the book of the dolls. And 3 of the dolls that's in this exhibition is in this book. And so I was going to create stories to go with the dolls, and I had big ideas. And I said, you know what, just do it already. I'm just tired of this. So the book is showing the front and the back of the doll. And I thought about what kind of books do I like? I like picture books. I really don't read the books, I like pictures. So I said, I might just make a picture book. So that's what this is. This was, okay, so there was we live in Harlem, Laura and I, and there was a call out for 125th Street Business Development, was putting a call out to artists to submit artwork to be hung on banners on 125th Street for a year. Laura told me I should apply. I saw it, and it's like, I don't have anything. And I think you had to tell me 3 times. 3 times is my number. If somebody comes to me 3 times, that means, okay, I gotta do it. So Laura said, why don't you use one of your dolls? And it's like, really? Because I'm sitting at home making them. And before this happened, my husband would look at me, come upstairs where I'm working, and he would say, why are you making these dolls? And it's like, I don't know, I'm just making them.
We don't need a reason.
Right, we don't need a reason.
Just do it.
So when she said, well, why not one of your dolls? I said, okay, what doll? What doll? am I going to, so I got these dolls, like, what am I doing here? And so I picked this one, which I think I picked this doll, because it had a lot of buttons. And then I had to attach her to somebody in Harlem. So I did some research, and I saw that Lois K. Alexander Lane was the founder of the Harlem Institute of Fashion. So if you fashion, you're dealing with buttons. And I figured that's who she's gonna be. She's gonna represent her. And so I submitted the work, and it got accepted. And so she was on a banner on 125th Street for a year.
Yeah. 8 feet, so even though our artwork may be this big, the photograph, they get blown up into 8-foot posters, and they hang on the top of those lamp posts. So that, yeah, we both got one. I got one,
Right.
Mine was Hazel Scott, and you, so yeah.
And this is Laura.
So we did a promotional card for ourselves.
Right. So it's that. So thank you, Laura.
And I was like, I forgot about that.
And these are just some other dolls. And also now, then I started putting dolls or do artwork onto canvas. So this is one here. So I would sew it separately on felt. I always start with felt. And then, so I'm making a collage using different fabrics, beading, since I have a lot of beads from doing the jewelry. So I'm incorporating all that, and then I'm sewing on felt. So it's that one, and this one. And then I have larger ones also.
And some of her dolls will have jewelry that you can take the
Yes.
jewelry off and wear the jewelry. So it becomes a piece that you can put and sit there and just exhibit it, or you could take the jewelry off and wear the jewelry.
Yeah. Like their necklace, you might go wear as a bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
This was a piece, this is about this size. And everything is crystal clear. She's wearing the crystal. I'm incorporating the beading. It's on felt, using lace, feathers, just different stones, and a hand-painted mask. So I had still, the mask I believe was painted like in 1997. I still have masks that I can use. Then I started doing paper dolls. So I incorporated, so what I do, I take existing fabric, I scan it, then I print it out on the cardboard and then cut it into shapes. And these are family members here. So I take old pictures, I print it out on cardboard and the same. So this is my mom right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is called One Hot Mama, and each doll has fans. It's because when you get to a certain age, you have menopause, and you always fan.
And you need your fan.
Right.
You gotta keep the fan.
Right. Keep cool. Alright. Okay, I forgot about this. So, when I got into the fiber art, before I got into fiber art, when I was burnt out from traveling, I ran into somebody who says, why don't you apply for this grant at the Center for Book Arts here in New York City, and you learn bookmaking. And I kind of like that idea, so I said, okay, I'll do that. So I applied, and this was the first time they was offering this grant. I apply, I get the grant, and so I'm learning bookmaking, which I love, and then I'm now incorporating fabric in the bookmaking. So this is considered a book. And what it is that it's called Inner Conversations. And so inside the pockets are tags that says I'm not good enough, who am I? These are conversations that I was going through in my mind while taking the class. Because it was a year long that I had gotten like the residency at the Center for Book Arts. So I was just going through my negative conversations. So I put it in the pockets to hide those conversations and focus on the positive, like miracle, brilliance, imagine, and believe. So that's what that is. And then from that book later on, Laura and I, we would go to, in Harlem, they had the Harlem Arts Alliance meetings, and somebody made an announcement about that HGTV is looking for artists to participate in this particular show. And I was sitting in the front, and the woman said, "You would be a good person for that." And it's like, okay. But I didn't do anything until the third person said it. So I submitted my artwork, I submitted books, I submitted jewelry, I submitted different things. And this is what they picked. So I was on HGTV demonstrating how to make that. And this is just showing some of my fiber art that's on the canvas. This is an 8x8 piece. And this is called Circles of Love, because this was during the time when I was taking care of my mom, who had Alzheimer's, and she was living with us, my husband and I. And since my mother taught me art, having her with me, I gave her needles and threads, and so she started sewing. And this, let me see, I'll show you. So these pieces have circles in it, so that's why they call Circles of Love.
And Shimoda and her mom had an exhibition at a small space I think it was in Harlem, with the work that she was doing while she's taking care of her mom. Since her mom was a milliner, a lot of handwork goes into that as well, making the hats. So though Miss Isola didn't know, Miss Isola was very cool for a long time. We would take her to different art openings, and she likes music and she likes the wine.
Yes,
But she had her working at home and sewing buttons on things, and they had a whole exhibition with artwork that they had done us together.
Right, like this is one of them. This is her. I printed her her face on fabric, and so she loved buttons, so she really sewed most of this. I like placed that on there, and then I just gave her free rein, and she did this sewing here. And then we took a class with phenomenal artist Dinga McCannon. And so together we did this piece here, and this is in tribute to my dad, and that's me and my dad, and so she did a lot of this work here. And this is considered a book.
And you did a zine at one point?
Yes, a zine, which is a small, well, it could be any size, a handmade book that you can make out of anything. Yeah. And then this is a quilt, a much larger quilt that I made. And it's Harlem Nights. And so this is all hand sewn. Laura uses the machine. I always like hand stitching, so I'm hand stitching everything. And this is another piece. And these are other, that's this side, that's that. So those are pins. Working with Mom. There go Mom. And here she is sewing. And this is the area where I work. This is how it looks on a great day, which is rare. And then this is what it really looks like. So that's where I do most of my work. And then this is like, I'll quickly go through this. So step by step of how I do my work. And I think that's it. And my work is in the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. And this is a display of my work. Here the jewelry, they have the jewelry, they have note cards, they have prints that I've done of my fiber art, and there's an original one there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move fast. So my name is Laura Gadsden. I am now a Harlem, consider myself a Harlem artist, but both Shimoda and I grew up in Jamaica, Queens. I think part of the dynamic of us being in Harlem is because we were in Queens, because in Queens there's a lot of folks who live in houses. We understood living in houses and living in property that we own. That is not necessarily the journey of everyone that is a native New Yorker, because it's mostly apartment dwelling. So it doesn't mean anything is wrong or right, but it just meant if we were most used to, you grow up, you get a job, you buy a house. that was the norm for our groups of folks. So and people say, well, why didn't the people in Harlem keep Harlem? Well, a lot of times the people in Harlem developed into, they were more apartment dwellers. It was not part of their norm. It just wasn't part of their own intimate culture. So that's why a lot of folks did not, that are indigenous to Harlem throughout many generations, didn't necessarily own property, especially as the property is now going into a whole nother realm. So I am most known as a fiber artist. I love everything about art. I deal with glass, I deal with paper, but the fiber arts allowed me to also do some dolls as well. So I start my story with my parents. When I first showed this picture, everybody thought this was me. That is my mother. My mother and father. It's interesting that this exhibit is called The Calling, because you have two siblings. I have two siblings. Neither of my two siblings are art oriented. I don't know about neither of your two siblings are, but some kind of way we picked up on what our parents did. My father was an artist. He was a commercial artist. He was a trained draftsman. He even had a drafting school in the Empire State Building basement at one point. He was a commercial artist before the computer, which meant in the porch of our home, he had a drafting table, ads and things that he would do as a freelance artist. They would come up, and I remember him working out there till he got his city job, because good middle-class minded folks get a good city job or a good job that's going to pay benefits and help to take care of their families. So my mother, when I was young, she was a homemaker, and that's a whole dynamic that's kind of not really available to everyone now, because it costs so much to even have your own apartment. You almost need a bunch of other folks to have an apartment. So those folks, I will tell you, they did not play about education. They did not care about your feelings. They were very clear-minded on what they wanted for you, and you almost couldn't have anything to say about it. I got into 3 other high schools in New York, performing arts for dance, music and art, and art and design for art. And my father just took the paper and signed the one that no conversation, signed the one I was going to, and handed it back to me. So I went to music and art. So I think I get my entrepreneurial spirit probably from him. He smoked a pipe. If you find a picture of my father, you will almost never see him without a cocktail in one hand, a pipe in one hand, or both. So he smoked a pipe, and he did something called Sculptor Ball, where he was going to teach other people how to, a little kit where you can sculpt your own pipe. It didn't go anywhere. You can see my childhood addresses on here, but he had started this company, and at that point, if you want to advertise it, you put a little ad in the newspaper. No internet or nothing like that, which means it doesn't go very far very quickly. And how many pipe smokers? There were less and less of those in the 60s and the 70s and 80s, but that was my dad's thing. Am I going forward? Yes. So this, of his own art, I only remember 3 pieces of art in the house that I remember that he did. This was a painting of the Birmingham bombing. Happily, I own it now. It's in my home. And it resonated with me so much that I've recreated it a couple of times. Once I did it as a quilt. And another time someone asked me, well, could you do something with the 4 little girls that perished on wearable art, on a denim jacket? So I did this jacket here, and there were actually 5 little girls that perished in that bombing. The 5th one was a sister of one of the ones that passed, and she lost an eye. I think she lost her sight in one eye. So this is the jacket that I did for that with my fiber art and sewing. Now, I do a lot of sewing by machine. And some people would say, oh, well, you're not a real quilter, you're cheating. I was like, if your grandmother had the sewing machine I had, she'd be using it too. You know, they're all choices. And I do handwork of sorts, but when I get to quilt something this big, even smaller things sometimes, I will do them by machine, because I've become very crafty with how you work that machine. Okay, so now my mother, the more handworking stuff I get from her, she sewed like Shamota's mom. So I learned my sewing and my crochet. I remember I made a blazer in high school. Made clothes of my own. You know, you buy some, you make some. And my mother crocheted, and she made an Afghan in the 70s for each of us. I still have mine. This is a new picture. I had to pull it out of somewhere and take a picture of it. And I just likened it to something that I did. Now, this was somebody commissioned me. I think I made this quilt 2 or 3 times to remake this quilt for them. And even this was not actually a pattern. I actually did the math on making how wide things were going to be so that they would all fit together and eventually make a rectangle. And this is my mother's Afghan. So it's like sometimes you're picking up things when you don't realize that you're picking up things. I just noticed those two things look similar as I'm putting this together for you all. And one of the things in fiber art we do is we're part of a community. We are very lucky to be part of a community of people that will purchase things that we make because they like looking like they're part of a, well, I don't say they're part of a group. They like supporting artists. They look like looking like they love art. So this is one of our, both of our Arlene Bascom,
Yes.
and this is a Harlem inspired jacket. It's actually over a sweatshirt. So use the sweatshirt as the base, put all the artwork on it, put the sweatshirt back together, and then you have your jacket. So this is the front and back of that jacket. And these are markers I actually made. They were a fabric paint, but you can buy blank markers and you can put liquid things in those markers. So I could get the medium that I needed to use, but I could use it as a marker. So this is me on my deck painting something. I said I'm gonna make this book, maybe I'll get to it. But this is all t-shirts, regular t-shirts. So the t-shirt now becomes a jacket by sewing it a little bit different. And the dress added a couple of regular t-shirts together and it becomes a dress that's wide with pockets.
And a t-shirt.
And that one is put together as well. My jacket is something that is I think this is I think this was a pattern.
Standing in the middle, I'm sorry. We want to see. We want to get
this jacket. The jacket I have on is a pattern that I think I purchased because that's how you used to make things. You buy the pattern, you go home and you cut the pattern out. And the only thing I think it's hard to find a pattern now. You don't have stores. You have to buy it online. And so I just did two of them. So this is the surface design. I did not have to do all of this work. This is the work of some folks in India. It's called Kantha. And you can buy it as fabric or you can buy it as a bedspread and use that bedspread. Because as I teach some of my students, sometimes you don't have exactly what you need, but you have something that's really close and you can use that thing. So this is life and art and back to art again. So this is a jacket. I took some pictures of this young lady in my jacket. I then took more pictures of her and she became a piece of artwork in an exhibit that I've done. So now I like to do my faces. A lot of times I'll do them in black fabric because there's something about the image of black that, and it's gotten a bad name. The idea that black is also thought to mean negative things and then they want to call a whole group of people black. So it's kind of mixed on how you call people different, how you adopt what other people call you. But I say if I can make black as beautiful as possible, the blackest of black, then that means everything ranging from that has to be beautiful too. So everything in between the two dynamics is going to be beautiful. So I've done dolls. I do them at different periods in time. I don't have any in this show. I have my quilt in this show. But these are done with polymer clay that you bake in your toaster oven. And, or I have a dedicated toaster oven. You don't know what that toxic, you don't know what that toxic stuff is going to do to your toast after that.
Yes.
So I always like to do a lot of angels, like Betty Baines. Her doll company is called Betty's Angel Dolls, and so I do a lot of angels. So these were Christmas angels one year. I also do paper dolls. So this was a paper doll that I printed. I actually etched out like a rubber stamp to make the face and printed a bunch of the faces. And they had little joints with those, they're not plastic, brads, with brads. Here's another doll. She's a Christmas fairy. And this was a three-dimensional doll. There was an art store in Harlem at one point, Artists and Craftsmen, and they had all these paper mache things that you could make things out of. And there was one that looked like a dress form. So I said, oh, that's the doll's body. So then they had a little box with a top. So that made the doll's face, and then I just added onto it paper and tissue paper, and was taught a little bit about how to do the tissue paper from Paula Whaley. So you see Paula Whaley's dolls with the tissue paper. She said, oh, and you use the glue and you put it in a spray bottle with some water. And she was very free with showing you how you did that. And I was able to use that for a couple of different things that I've done with my paper dolls. So more of my paper angels, and I try to include some man angels singing. And the same way I did the faces on this paper is how I do them on fabric. I'll use black fabric, as in here, and I'll use something that's an oil paint stick. And I use the oil paint stick. I used to use crayons, oil pastel, but oil pastels will rub. And one person once told me, oh, I would never exhibit your art because the pastel will do something. Now, they've been exhibiting pastel for years and every place else. So anyway, I eventually figured out what to do, so I use an oil paint stick now. It's oil paint in a more solid form that will dry in a couple of days. Okay, these are some dolls that I've made that are found objects. So they're cut out of what is it? Magazines, and then there's tomato cans and beads from the house, and then I go to Marshall's and find different little metal things that I could cut apart with a metal shears, and steel wool for the hair. So those are some assemblage dolls. So now getting to the Harlem aesthetic. Shimoda and I together are the Harlem aesthetic. For over 10 years, we hosted shows somewhere between 4 to 6 times a year that incorporated other artisans. And people thought, oh, it's so nice that you could do this community thing. I said, well, the community is actually just Shimoda and I, but we have a community platform, and that enables us to get things done at a quicker rate than having a lot of people all doing the deciding on what and how it's going to be done. So we have 3 cowrie shells that would represent this, because there was a third person. Her name was Patti Weary. She was Patti, New York. She did fashion. So Shimoda at that point was doing mostly jewelry. I was doing mostly quilt art, and Patti was doing fashion. Unfortunately, Patti passed in like 2012, I'm gonna think it was. And so, but we kept doing them, and we actually built on the momentum more and more. However, because Shimoda and I were both taking care of our moms, and we were both trying to be, we're not trying to be our artists, trying to get more artwork done. We had started to decide to not do it anymore, the shows, to pursue us as individual artists. Our moms both transitioned in the same year. Wow. And then Shimoda took care of her mom with Alzheimer's for about 5 or 6 years. I took care of my mom, who was wheelchair feeding tube nonverbal, for 12 years. And so a lot of people were like, oh, well, you know, they were so sorry. We were like, well, we gave them, I want to believe that them being with us, with the way that we were working with them, which just meant we just treated them like every day. They were regular folks, and then the fact that they're unable to do something or a bunch of things is just part of what had to be dealt with. So we had put in that good time. and then we had to do we don't know what we're going to do now. We're not going to worry about it. And now just in 2023, 24, we're starting to saying, okay, these are things I want to do. And I can change them if I like, but these are things I want to try to get done.
And the shows was in her brownstone.
In my home, which I don't keep good house, which meant a night before there was always a long tucking and folding and pushing, and there's always a thing. I actually have seen pictures of that room from 2012, and the room is clear. You can see all the way to the wall. Something happened over the pandemic. There's dogs in there, there's all kinds of other stuff. So there's plants, there's a tree. So now we're gonna have to see what we can do to make it so it's a more easy process like it used to be in the beginning. But these we always would take a picture of the group of artists. A lot of artists from Brooklyn would come to Harlem. And I think that the setting that we provided there, even if they didn't make a lot of money, they just enjoyed being in company, because a lot of us create in solitude. You know, you're not at a firm where you have co-workers. You are the firm. You're doing a lot of every part of it yourself. And so, you like it when you have opportunities to be around other artists. And then you get to buy nice stuff. So like Shimoda's got my shirt. This is from someone else. I made this. This was from a different artist than the shirt was, even though they look like they go together. So we've had these earrings are from someone. I have a host of Shimoda accessories at home. And I think my wardrobe and my soul is better for it from knowing all these other artists. Okay, so now in making dolls, this is a doll that I made, and I know that, where is she? She's gone now. Was asking about this. I think this is the doll that Francine owns. There you are, Camilla.
I love that.
Okay, so this was me putting together the doll. The doll's arms were made out of crocheted wire. Somebody from Europe somewhere makes this little widget. The same way you do with some hand knitting, when you get a little hand knitting loom. You do the same thing, but it's wire. And I was able to use that to make the arms and a little bit sturdier wire for the hands. And these are bottle dolls, or regular bottles, whether it be alcohol, juice, soda. And the heads are, everybody knows the Keurig machine, but there's something called the Nest. It's another machine, another coffee machine. The pods have metal caps. And those, Nespresso, the Nespresso machine. Well, of course, makers always are saving stuff because it's going to be good for something one day. And so I have all these Nespresso tops. I painted them to make the faces. You just may oval them out a little bit. And then strung beads and did some regular crochet with wire instead of yarn. And that's how I was able to make their outfits, their bodices, and add little things that I buy because, I think I'm a professional shopper in some part of my life. So that in my quilting, sometimes you start with strips, and luckily enough, most of these strips I did not have to cut. Cutting strips is not hard these days because they've got gadgets they're going to sell you for every little part of this quilting job. But this strip, I'd have strips and lay them out. Then I put the strips together and sew them and cut them apart and sew them together again. And this is a little part of my sewing studio that you can't even get in. A film crew came in there one day, everybody had to come in like this, like this, to take a film. But it's in one side I have my ironing board and my sewing machine. Behind me is my long arm, which is a table that is longer than this table. It's about this high. And instead of you sewing under your sewing machine and sitting, you walk the sewing machine around the table. And that allows you to get through a lot of this quilting easier. And you can buy programs and machinery that you can push a button and it'll quilt the thing for you on its own. But I never worked mine, and now it's out of date, so it probably can't even make it work. But I've always liked to just walk the machine myself. So basically, when you see stuff, it'll look a lot like my handwriting. If you've seen any of my quilts that have writing in them, it actually looks like my handwriting. Okay, so these are all pieces that became, this piece right here is the making of this piece here. And this is it all hanging across the long arm. Pinning and piecing, and that's just making the background. So I'm actually making a whole quilt just to be the thing in the background. And then comes the foreground. And in the foreground, I have a series that's called The Water Brought Us. It started with an exhibit in 2012 by a woman named Cookie Washington in Charleston, South Carolina. That was a mermaid show. And black mermaids in that was in it. This one, the latest one, or the one in 2012?
No, the latest one.
The latest one. This was in the latest one. And I expanded on it because, and I liked putting the mermaids in the Middle Passage story, and there's so many different parts of the Middle Passage story. And people that want to think of, that why do you want to retell such a horrible story? Well, I think it's important. Because people have not stopped doing horrible things. So when people stop doing horrible things, then we'll stop telling the stories about the horrible things they've done. But putting the mermaids was a way to give grace to those who lost their lives at various parts of this voyage. Because anybody here who can connect any lineage to the Middle Passage is a direct descendant of survivor of the Middle Passage, which meant that some kind of way, by unnatural selection, you're strong.
That's right.
And you have to remember that. I've known some young people older than you, 30 years old, And they really, you know, people don't like to paint. They don't want to think of the dark parts of things, but because there's a dark night, there is a morning, there is a light, and it's all part of a cycle that goes on. So sometimes you miss out on the good stuff if you just get rid of all the bad stuff. I'll tell you one thing, you touch something hot like a glue gun, you know not to touch it again. You only think it's a story about you're gonna get burned by the glue gun until you've been blessed by the glue gun. So okay, so this is a quilt. I can't remember the name of this one offhand because I'm going quickly. And Cookie just had another recent show, and in this show, I did a piece called Solstice Sisters. So the solstice is the times when you get to the, you're working toward the days getting shorter and the days getting longer, the transition of the seasons. And I think part of folk artists, if you allow yourself to be put in those categories, which we don't mind, we make artwork for people. We make artwork for ourselves and the way that we live our lives and that reflect the lives. One of the things I like about the dolls is that I remember very specifically when I was younger, you didn't know, there were black dolls, but there weren't always in abundance that every Christmas morning could be a black doll there if you waited too late. So Barbie was a big thing. And my mom could not find any more black Barbies that Christmas. So what did she do? She got Malibu Barbie. Malibu Barbie got a suntan. She got bleach blonde hair. She got something. I still have Malibu Barbie. So that idea of recreating an image, it's interesting how things when you're younger, they still affect you. And I always want to make nice images, especially of brown people. Now, I am someone who has long hair. And I am kind of sad and happy right now in this moment where everybody can have long hair because, you know, it was a thing when I taught high school, I didn't wear my hair out. It was too much of a distraction. People would fondle over it. It felt weird. But now I like that young girls, no matter what your hair length, you want it to be short today, it's short today. You want to have it long, it's long today. And I feel good for them that they can have this coveted thing that they didn't think they could ever have. However, I want them to also feel like whatever they have naturally or whatever they decide to do is going to be beautiful too. So that's one of the things with the dolls. But, you know, people like hair. So this is another quilt pattern. Instead of squares, we're using triangles. Those triangles will make hexagons, and putting those hexagons together goes together in strips, as opposed to making the hexagon and putting the hexagons together. You put the strips of the triangles, and then you put those together, which means you have to keep up with where goes where if you want this to look like this kaleidoscope thing. It's called what they call, it's not stack and whack, it's called one block wonders. They look very kaleidoscope. So I use those to be the girls' dresses, so you know which 2 seasons these are going to be by the colors. What 2 seasons are these going to be?
Winter and fall.
Autumn and winter. So Solstice Sisters, autumn and winter. And here they go in all their glory now with the trees and the leaves, kind of the snowflakes are going this way and the leaves are going this way. It's like the kiss at the time of the solstice when autumn meets winter. And I wrote a very nice little story about them, and I was lucky enough to have someone purchase this while it was in exhibition. It's still out there somewhere. And also commission me to do the other 2 sisters. So I am happy that they will come back home and hopefully the other 2 sisters, and I'll have all 4 sisters together at least for a moment before they go back to who actually owns them. So this is another one of those bid things, some of the things that artists get to apply for. MTA does stuff using a lot of different kinds of artists. But they were honoring music this year, and they wanted maybe Harlem musicians. So this is, I can't think of his name now. Curtis Blow. Y'all know him. He at the beginning of hip hop. Curtis Blow. But he's a Harlem icon, and this is right from the turntables with actual wax on them, and it was all of that. If somebody bumped the table, you would hear that go happen. And this was the 6-foot poster that it became, that was on 125th Street for about a year or more. And I'm lucky enough to have this one in the collection of the Smithsonian, because the Smithsonian collected a bunch of quilts from a Carolyn Muslomi, who I believe has the largest collection of modern African American quilts. She was collecting them, as I understand the story, she was collecting them to give to her grown children. Because these, like a lot of artwork, they usually only appreciate in value. And especially when you have a big collection, you'll have something that could be exhibited. Somebody might pay you to exhibit your collection. Well, you know, like, I don't know what it is, but a lot of children of artists or art collectors don't want nothing to do with the art. So she decided to sell it or donate it to the Smithsonian in one of their art wings. I don't think it's the African American, but I think it's one of their art collection groups. So that's some of the lucky things that you get as an artist. I was able to do a tribute to Ntozake Shange for the 40th anniversary of For Colored Girls. And through that, I have a similar piece, not the piece, but a similar piece that I remade because I felt it was important for them not to have just a print. I wanted to be able to say, I have a piece of work in the Schomburg collection, so I got a piece of work in the Schomburg collection for one of the Lady in Orange's poems. And so that's some of my story.
So, thank you both for sharing your tremendous journey. Leah, Jordan, you want to do the introduction so we can capture that part?
Oh, okay. Okay, so today we are here at CityLore. The time is now 3:22 p.m. We have the pleasure of interviewing Miss Laura Gadsden and Miss Shimoda Donna.
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel?
Shimoda Donna Emmanuel.
Emmanuel.
Yeah.
So would you like us to use your full name or just Miss
I mean, if you're talking me, Shimoda is good.
Shimoda and Miss
You can say Miss Laura since I was gonna just Laura, but to some other students I know may see your thing, and then I'll have to retrain them.
So Miss Laura and Miss Shimoda, and we're also here with Miss Camilla and Miss Kibibi.
Yes.
So who are sharing their art from their cultures as artists with us. Mind Borders is a creative arts center that encourages youth and families of the community to grow and learn through quality arts and education programs, just like the Folk Culture program. Here in the Dr. Beverly J. Robinson Community Folk Culture program, we learn how to identify and document tradition bearers in our community, like yourselves, and so we can preserve our culture. We also learn that folklore is the combination of two words, folk meaning people and lore meaning knowledge, meaning that folklore is a special knowledge of the people passed down from generation to generation and that holds groups and communities together. So thank you for letting us interview you and sharing everything, your art, your stories with us today. So,
That's right. We're glad to see it and hear it.
Okay, to start off, I would like to know all of you guys. What would you like to go first? So as children, you had dolls. So does that impact your art in any way when you were creating your dolls or your artwork or any of sort of your arts, like your jewelry maybe?
For me, I have an older sister. So she had this black doll, and you know, when she grew up, and it was my black doll. So, and it was about this tall, and when my mother was teaching me art, crocheting, I crocheted her a top and skirt, and then I grew up, went to a Catholic school, and so we had rosary beads. So I took apart my rosary bead and I made earrings to go on. And I still have this doll till that day.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
yeah, so it affected. Just started with my mother. And kept going.
I'm a collector of things, which is why I still have the afghan my mother made me. I know I was in the 6th grade when she made it. The dolls, I still have. The Malibu Barbie, I still have. The velvet doll that you pull the hair out the head, I still have. I have my original Raggedy Ann doll. I even think I have a teddy bear from when I was 1 year old. So I just keep things. So you can imagine what my house is full of. But I think maybe they're part of my first collection of things. And just the idea of dolls, I think that I know I did not stop playing with Barbie till I was 14 years old. I was in high school. 14 years old. At 14, it was too big. It was Barbie that I gave up, and I think we stopped trick-or-treating at 14. Those are the two things that we kind of stopped doing. But most people had already kind of given up the idea of having them. And I know I wasn't playing with them, but they were there. You know, you still had the whole other things that teenagers want to do. But you still were kind of akin to the things that you had as kids. I think I wasn't, not that I wasn't ready to grow up, I wasn't ready to release everything that kept you young. And I will say this, for myself, not having children, the whole idea of aging is very different for me. Because those different landmarks that say, oh, I'm now an adult of this status, adult of that status, I just made a nice sized birthday. And I'm like, it's just, I just rather party in the daytime rather than at night, but I still want a good party.
Okay, so I'll ask the next question. Do you have a message you want others to know when they look at your dolls and your artwork?
That anybody can have art, that anybody can make art, that for me, my art, like, it makes people happy, and people tell me that it's healing for them. So my message is joy, smile, love.
Some of my work actually deals with subject matter or a particular icon that I think needs to be remembered. But I'm getting ready to, or I've already started walking to this thing of doing landscapes, because I think this is now a time where inspiration for your soul is necessary, and even with the historic pieces, sometimes that brings that about too. So yeah, I enjoy inspiring other people to either in just looking at it and appreciating it, or to wear it and think of it as something that they really honor and treasure. So.
What are some things that you associate with your dolls or doll making? Like, is it a piece of your personality, a particular piece, like you said, with your pearls? What are some things that you associate with them?
While I'm making it?
The process of making the doll and the doll itself.
The process for me is sometimes I have no idea what it's going to be, what it's going to look like, what I'm going to do. There are times where I'll say I want to use this piece here. Like, I want to make something with this. I don't know, is it going to be a necklace? Is it going to be down here? Is it, you know, I just like let the materials talk to me.
Speak
to
for
me.
itself.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm like spirit led.
I'm always learning something new. And then I try to figure out, well, how do you now take this information and work it towards something else? So it can be a little maddening, and a lot of people don't understand it, but I think just like people put other people in a box, they always try to put artists, well, you do this. It's like, yeah, I do that, but I also do a bunch of other things. And at any point in time, I might go back to those other things. Or you might see some of those other things in the piece I'm doing here. So, just learning new things and seeing how you can certain level of mastery and a certain level of now how can you incorporate this. We had a friend named Jerry Gant. He's known as a sculpture artist from Newark, New Jersey. He has some public art pieces there, and one of the things he said is that you want to always put layers on your work. Like, you put different things, because even if somebody wants to bite your style, steal what you're doing, they can't get every layer exactly like you did, because it's so multi-layered. So I took that to heart.
So it's about applying yourself to every piece of your work, so other people just can't say, oh, I did this, I took that style and I made it my own, but at the same time, it's you putting yourself as your art?
You know what, and I like something that you said, but I'm gonna say, I do know artists that very much worry about people stealing from them. Well, first of all, there's not a whole lot that's brand new under the sun. And and you're always inspired by other people, other artists. You're inspired by the time that you live in. So there's going to be some similarity. But I think that is you making it your own, and a lot of times just you really being in the moment when you make those pieces really makes it your own. So I that's a set of worry that I don't like. I have stuff on the internet. If it's a situation I got to deal with, I'll deal with it. But I'm not going to not make or not show something because somebody might do something. Yeah.
So Ms. Laura, you said that you use fabric, paper, and glass to make your artwork. Can you explain why you chose those materials?
When I first moved to Harlem, I considered myself a stained glass artist. That's the art that you see on the glass in the churches. So I know that technique. Later on, I had an aunt that was doing glass as well. She just drove all the glass over to my house. Came to find out it wasn't glass for stained glass, it was glass for fused glass. So then I took on a whole fused glass. I think I have a quilt friend, she says I'm like a crow. Crows like shiny things. So I think anything that's shiny, sequins, glass is shiny and clear. So I'm drawing the glass. I think that's why I like the bottle dolls, because there was the glass involved. I did a felted glass doll. So I felted the bottle, and the felting is just the wool. Like when you take your wool sweater, just wool in it, and you put it in the dryer, washing machine, and dry by mistake, because you forgot to sort your clothes, and it shrinks up into this little thing. That is a physics part of wool. Wool does that when it's agitated with soap and when it gets, so it'll bind up. So now you can use that thing to make stuff. Okay, you might have lost your sweater, but you could make something out of it. It could be dog sweater now, a doll sweater now. But so just how do you combine those things? So they're not always combined, but I try to sometimes combine it if it's possible. If it's possible.
Were you also influenced by others in your community by your art?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm gonna say definitely we are our parents' children. Both of us, very interesting. We are our parents' children. And this is also a time that's getting ready to be passé, because it used to be that women in the household could sew. Even if they didn't do it, they knew how to do it. But it's getting to be that this will not be, people will not learn, and they might be already be, they do not learn sewing necessarily from the home. They learn sewing because they took an interest in it. You could go to YouTube and learn it. You could take a class in it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as you watch how things change, so we're influenced by the time that we lived in, but we actually picked it up from our parents, but we don't do it like our parents did. We do it differently. My mother crocheted. She made things from a pattern. I like crochet because you can navigate a crochet hook and different from knitting needles. Knitting needles, you kind of have to have your plan ahead of time, unless you're really, really good. Crochet hook, you can have just a basic single crochet. You can go all over the world with that. So, so I think maybe in that way we're freer than our parents in a certain sense, because they thought to do things a way. It's a way to do it, and we do it this way. Whereas we were like, oh, well, why can't we have that string hanging and call it a thing?
Right.
And then
Definitely. And I like to say that she was talking about parents, is that what I didn't say before was my father, he worked at the post office. He was a photographer. He knew how to do calligraphy. He made the furniture in the house. He built they probably don't have them now, but a reel-to-reel where you record music, or he would record his operas. He had a workroom, he built a dark room, he finished the basement. I mean, he was definitely a master artist. And so I know I took some things from him, and learning how to figure things out. Oh, this doesn't work, or we don't have this tool to use. Oh, I know I can do, like, I can create something else, like, just learning how to figure things out. I know I learned from him. And my brother being a milliner, and That, and then other artist friends, she always inspired me. Looking at her work, it's inspiring. Going to DC, the DC artists, the DC Maryland crew, this phenomenal artist Joyce Scott in Baltimore. Definitely look her up. She's phenomenal. Somebody told me, referred me to her. She was teaching a beading class in Penland. And so I was her assistant, and it was just a phenomenal experience, phenomenal experience. So learning from other artists helps tremendously.
Also, Ms. Laura, you had said that your parents, I believe it was you that said that your parents chose your high school for you, your father?
Yes, they did. Yes, he did.
So in your artwork, like, how does your emotions, like, do you have emotions from back then that like inspire artwork now, as well as for you too? How do your parents like affect your art as well?
I know that my father had a dark room as well in the house. I took pictures of my high school classmates, reinstituted the dark room in our bathroom because it was the place we could make the darkest. So I have some photographs that I not only took in high school, but I also developed them through my dad. And your question was?
How does your parents and like maybe the emotions from your teenage years affect your art?
I don't know about anybody else's parents, but these were some no nonsense people that I had. It was almost like you know what don't kill you will make you strong, and it wasn't so much because they were doing bad things to you, but they were just very clear about certain things.
And they required what they required.
Their expectations were here. You could not speak incorrectly. There's certain things, you could not walk on the back of your shoes. You could not put an S on the end of the word mine. These are things that could get you in some serious, hurt. So, and I don't say that is the way everyone should be raised, but I do say that there was a vision that I saw in that made you strong enough and very capable. I know I am the most capable now because of what I saw those people do and the way they attacked the things that they did. I think for me, my parents are ever present, and I feel lucky that I was able to give some of that back to my mother, when she needed it. And the other thing I will say is neither one of my parents had stellar childhoods. So the whole idea that because you had some painful situations in your life and then you bring those over, that's a choice whether you think about it or not. Because for everything they didn't have, we had the 6 foot, and we didn't have a lot of money. 6 foot Christmas tree, we did trick or treat, we had Easter egg hunt, we had all of these things that my mom's mom died when she was young. Her father forgot to put her in school. She didn't get to school until she was 7 years old. My father's mother didn't raise him. His people raised him in Texas. And it wasn't until she got married later, when he was a teenager, that she even came. So some of these stories made my mother a very curt and serious and sharp person. And could use the truth like a dagger. but still in the idea of being honest to you so that you would have something of wealth to fall back on. Not as to tear you down. She just wasn't really good. She just doesn't have the gentle touch. I didn't learn about hugging and kissing until we got to dance class. And at West African dance class, everybody hugged and kissed at the end of the class. But so these are things that I learned, and I feel very lucky to be me. I have 2 siblings. Their view of the world are different than mine, and I'm happy to be me. It would say 2 parents, very, very equal to everybody in the house.
Can I ask a question?
I just want to mention that, and also she's a dancer.
Yeah.
So she's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, because he wouldn't let me go to
African
performing arts in high school, and I went to music and art for art, which I am very happy that I did. In hindsight, by the time I get to be a sophomore in college, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, but it's not in art, it's in dance.
So I wanted to There's so much of what she said that resonates with Kabibi's life. There's something about what you all are experiencing so abusive.
We sisters.
But all three of you, she's into the jewelry making. She did the African dance. We all grew up at the same time. We all had that or both parents that did that. Right, I mean, you know, they don't necessarily, it's what they can do with their eyeballs, it's amazing. So what did you hear when you heard them speaking? What did you hear and what did you feel?
So many things. I mean, from small to large. Number one, we are daughters of parents who came through the Great Depression. My grandfather was a tomato farmer with 5 children in Virginia, making $1.50 a week. Heard that there were jobs in Baltimore, put his children in a car and brought children, wife, and everybody into Baltimore to make the great sum of $15 a week. My mother, you know, it took everybody to work to make that thing a thing. So the expectations on both of my side, both of my parents were older siblings that helped to put their younger siblings, the ones after them, through college. Because their parents, and they were the first, so my father, a student of Dr. George Washington Carver, who was a fiber artist, not only a botanist, but a fiber artist. He crocheted and he made plant-based dyes out of the plants that he grew. Well, those things touch my life, right? They touch my life. My father, opera in the house on Saturday, hey, but that was the musical background while you did your chores, and you did not do anything until you woke up and did everything that you needed to do. Period. There's like not a sloppy room. What? What? Something on the floor? What? No, not that. But they also, my mother doesn't consider herself a fiber artist. My mother doesn't consider herself an artist at all. Both of my parents were science teachers, right?
Yes.
Period, right? But my mother made Afghans. And so there's a whole community of people that are from the African dance community whose children all have granny square Afghans made by my mother. So those squares, and my grandmother was a quilt maker. She did not do that. She came to Baltimore and became a domestic, and because that's what you needed to do, that's what you did at the time. But as she got older, she would collect things, and my other aunts would be, oh, Ida's playing with rags again. Here's Ida with the rags. Ida with the rags. That's, you know, but now I am that person that collected all bits and pieces of everything that I made for my children, my 4 children, bits and pieces. So because I said, well, when I actually grow up, I will know because I will make a quilt out of these things. So for hoarding rags and fabric, I have corners and stacks and bags of pieces of that I just can't do away with, you know. And making dolls. The first doll I made was because my children, my girls, who are in their 40s now, wanted Cabbage Patch dolls, and all of them were pink with yellow hair. And I was that one that would paint the Muppet brown, you know, like, oh, my. You know, that's, you know, or hide the strawberry shortcake or the G.I. Joe. It's like, it doesn't look like us. That is so nice, and then just hide it, and it would never show up again. So in order for my girls to have those dolls that they were looking for as holiday gifts, I had to make them. So those were the first dolls that I actually made by coming to the toy shows in New York, right? Because it wasn't in the Delmarva area, and getting Sun Man instead of He-Man. right? Because, right, sunburn. And a really beautiful melanated brown, just kissy face, huggy bean doll that I can make a body for and make clothes for. Those were the first dolls that I made, and that was, you know, we're headed like 45 years ago, right? And it was an extension of me as a young artist, not knowing that I was an artist, like the thing that I did instead of playing tag on the playground was to learn to crochet from, you know, so I'd sit on the park bench and crochet or knit or whatever. And by the time I was in middle school, I was spending whatever coins or allowance that I could get to go to art class. By the time I was 16 and learning to drive, I was putting my coins together to put gas in the tank to get to dance classes. So I didn't think to call myself an artist because the expectation in the house is that you get a real job. You get a job, and, you know, and do those things. And in my house, it was to be an educator. That, you know, more than, because I was formed by scientists and educators, so that was my expectation. And to this day, I'm a hell of a teacher. I can teach anything to anybody, no matter what their
Touch me on that, girl, touch me.
You know, I'm a hell of an educator. I can do that in my sleep, upside down and over and under. And, you know, but I also couldn't breathe without art touching every fiber of my being. I have to make it, I have to teach it, I have to curate it, I have to present it, I have to do all of those things, you know? I got away from your parent question, I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Okay, so what I'm getting from this, seeing from you guys' eyes, is that your parents did set a standard because as like maybe middle, lower class people, the standard was to be greater than what your parents are. So they set like a rule in the house, oh, okay, you do this and you get out, you find a good job that could provide generations from now. And I guess that's the same with me and my mom. Like, she's not very like strict. She's very like, oh, do what makes you happy. But at the same time, what I want for me is like something that I can build generations upon. So I guess I take what you guys get from your parents and like, okay, you have to be greater than whoever came before you and build upon so you know what you want to do later on in life and you can have the freedom to intertwine with what you love doing. I love reading, I love writing, so whatever I do, like I do my schoolwork, maybe I'll write like a little poetry here on the side, just like keep me going and keep me motivated. So I guess what doing I love to do and doing like the work that's needed for me to have a better future, I just like try to intertwine into whatever I'm doing in school. So I guess that's what you guys, parents, are trying to instill in you, like even though you have these set of restrictions, like you guys can still do what you love as long as you get the work done.
But I don't think they were restrictions. I don't think they were restrictions. I think they were elevations, you know, and just ways of showing up. I just think it's love and you know.
Wanting what's best.
And wanting you to be protected.
That's right.
And the best way to make you protected is to make sure that your brain was functioning at top capacity, you know, as often as possible. I remember if you exhibited being, you know, making a bad decision based on, you know, you just weren't, there was a problem with that because we know we have smart people. And you're not behaving like a smart person right now. I know one time my brother, it was 60 degrees out or something, and my mother called him in to get a jacket. And he didn't want to go looking for the proper jacket, so he was outside with this faux fur coat on. So there was an issue with that because, you know, you're not using. I know you're smart. We've had you tested. We know what you can do. You know, so now, and you know, it's a day that you had on nothing. We call you in to put on a little something, and you're out with a fur coat because you don't want to look for the. So now we have an issue with that. So it was that kind of. I just think it's expectations, and I'm now back in the classroom. Most of my teachers, both of my parents were educators down the line as well, and I'm back in the classroom, and as I step into the classroom, of course, most of the teachers are younger than me. And I am floored sometimes by not the young people, but the expectation placed on the young people. Like,
Lack of
people don't,
expectation.
lack of
Lack of
expectation.
expectation.
For instance, the not knowing your name as a teacher they see on a regular basis. I know you must hear it in your classrooms, Miss, 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 Miss. I've been teaching you since October. How do I expect you to learn anything if you don't even know my name? It's 2 syllables. It's really, you apply yourself. It's possible, but I don't blame the young people for that, and I don't really blame anybody for that. I just am watching, because I've been away from teaching for so long. I'm watching. There's been something that I would say is like an erosion. So it used to be that, remember, if you were of color and could be put in a certain category, that gave people license to call you whatever they wanted to. They were not required to know your name. All the more reason why I think now. And you all are near the workforce age now. So, knowing someone's name could be that one thing that puts you one step ahead of the person next to you trying to get that same job. Because you remembered Mr. Smith's name when you walked into that interview, and it's the second interview, and now you remember, oh, thank you, Mr. I think we sometimes we do people, anyone, anywhere, a disservice when we don't make them to have the best expectation that's possible to anybody.
But we have to wrap up soon, and I want to make sure that we get some additional questions in from, but I know Niara, you're waiting patiently. All right, so just to give everyone a chance to ask a question, because we have a tour that's coming up next, and then we have to jump on the bus. Thank you so much.
Hi. Look who made it. Gloria. Okay, all right, go ahead. Yeah.
So, have any of you created any personal traditions during any type of process, making any type of art? Have you personally created any traditions making that you can pass down to future generations?
Hold on, let me get to this first. You heard it, right? You're asking the question that you wrote. This is an interview lesson. You already know the answer.
Like
Think about it. You already heard the answer. I want you to think back about what personal tradition struck you. That they, what did Laura say? What did Shimona say? What did Ms. Kapita say that struck you? They talked about a personal tradition. Which one resonated with you?
Well, the different types of art.
Okay, but so now reframe the question and say, this is what struck me about personalized. Say, this is what struck me about what you said. What did they say that meant something?
For the different types of art.
Okay, ask her the question, and then ask her the question.
So what different, I don't know. Like,
What did she say that meant something to you? Or what did Ms. Shimoda say that meant something to you?
Well, I know they said something about dance classes.
That meant something to you?
Well, I used to take dance classes.
Okay,
Nice.
that is a way for you to get into the conversation. Tell her that, say that.
Well, a couple of things. Crocheting, because my grandma taught me how to, or my grandma's teaching me and my sister how to sew, but dance classes, me and my siblings all take. But different personal traditions, when you hear artists, you think of only like one term or one thing or canvas. You don't really think of like jewelry and crocheting and quilting, and you don't really think about different types of art. And even now that I'm realizing, like, I'm listening, my mom is like, she doesn't like to call herself an artist, but she does hair braiding and jewelry making and basically all of the above. So I'm kind of like getting the same
Thing from that.
summary, yes.
Now
That's
remember,
nice to know, that's nice to
very
know.
nice to know. And you said you had a beautiful opening statement about folklore. Can you say it again? What did you say? What is folklore?
Folk meaning people in one main knowledge.
Right, and so what did you, now, wrap it up and tell me, what did they just talk about that resonates with what you just said? How is this folklore?
Well, it's different people, you all have different stories, but kind of the same. I don't know, it sounds different in different like terms and different versions of it, but it's kind of the same story.
And now you just learned, because your mother's doing it, right? Exactly where they were. So now these are repositories of culture. So what are you? A repository of culture and an artist. So now ask a question. Put yourself in that frame, now ask a question. Ask the question. Ask the question, but put yourself in the frame and ask the question. Don't act like you didn't. Did you hear me say ask? With the S and the N? I heard my mother say, what? What you say? Okay, go ahead and now personalize the question. Now ask it again.
Well, different traditions that I heard all of you talk about, what is your favorite or what is the most significant tradition that you have created during your process?
During my process with my parents, in
No,
terms of,
for your art.
I would say the fiber art and like having my mother start me off with the fiber art. And I don't know, the fiber art and jewelry, it's just all meshed in there. That's my main focus.
I know for me, I remember when Shimoda and I met at the Harlem Arts Alliance. And I think it was the calling yourself an artist. I think that sometimes you feel like you need to have some kind of certification, somebody said something to you, but it's declaiming it for yourself, and I think that goes across the board for anything. So if you wanted to be a scientist, you don't necessarily have to say, I went to school, you just have to do the study. You have to be paying attention to the things in that field of study that you want, that you're interested in. And I remember we were people who made stuff and did stuff, but for me it was like, oh, because I'm going to this artist meeting, we're going once a month. Oh, we're artists, until the point that now it just rolls off the tongue. Well, what are you? I'm an artist. Why is she dressed so colorful? I can dress that colorful because I'm an artist. I can have these outrageous opinions because I'm just an artist. Pay attention. So I think it's claiming that, but I think that goes across the board in claiming anything before you count yourself out of it, thinking I need to get to somewhere. Now, of course, there are journeys in that you got to get, that you probably should have, and make sure you take those paths so that you learn more about it. But you have to really be able to claim it yourself. And it was when I was with Shimoda at the Harlem Arts Alliance, and we're going once a month, and we're listening to all these people do these different things, and some people are getting grants, and we're like, yeah, we're artists, right? Yeah, we're artists too. Yes, we're artists.
And sometimes I have to say, even now, say that because I work from home, doing art, but also there's so much involved, not just making art. You got computer work, you got,
Social media,
the this and that, da. So I might be on the computer more hours than doing art, or I might not have made any art that day. And then when I noticed that, it's like, wait a minute, I'm an artist. I need to be making art. Like, I really consciously say I'm an artist, create art. And so that's why that has to be one of the first things I do is make art and then have everything else come after.
You have a follow-up? As Ms. Katina.
I still want to ask how the significant traditions that you created.
So, I totally agree with what they said. But in terms of significant traditions, me personally, one of the things that I do as an artist is put my hand in the indigo vat. So I acquire, I'm a consummate shopper like Ms. Lauren talked about, so I love the process of acquisition, that acquiring, and that's like an elevated terminology. I'm not just buying a thing, it's an acquisition exhibition. And that could take me anywhere. It could take me to the villages in Africa. It could take me to Cuba, it could take me to the Low Country, it could take me wherever. But the thing that I do that is different than most is put my hands in the indigo vat, which has its own history, right? Ms. Laura talked about the history of our people out of enslavement and into enslavement, and you see Mami Wata there praying for the lost lives through the Middle Passage. That's what that quilt is about. Well, indigo is that thing too. When we talk about indigo in this country, we generally think about Asia reflexively, but the gold and the treasure and the wonderment is straight out of the belly of Africa, of West Africa, right? You see indigo as touched by the darker people, which means West Africans, Nubians, in the pyramids, the Egyptian that follows itself into West Africa. Well, my dolls are all blue because they start in the indigo vat. Well, not all of them, but most of them. And in most of my work, I do a lot in terms of mixed media collage. I work in quilts, but almost all of my work has some pieces that have come, that I have designed in the traditions of, or inspired by the traditions of Adire in Nigeria, and have hand dyed myself, so that tradition is part of my work now. It's part of what I do, and it's also part of what I teach in workshops. So that is a tradition that I've evolved to, that is different than most, that I'm very proud of.
Can you understand why they are in this exhibition and what, from just your conversation today, can you understand what the exhibition is about and why these people are represented? What did you hear?
What I got was that in the exhibition, it's not about just being Black and representing yourself. It's also representing your background and our culture in general, where we came from as a people, and how we could put ourselves out there more, and how we can share with other artists as well, whether from the African American background or just African background in general, from the Caribbean, all over. It's just to connect as a people, to spread the message that we are here and we're showing ourselves. Despite all the light we may show, all the good things we've done, we also come with a dark past that needs to be shown because we haven't gotten the entirety of our representation.
Jordan, what did you get? Why are these people in this exhibition?
I'll probably say that they all have their stories to tell. They have amazing artwork, and I think that this exhibition was probably was meant to show their artwork, basically.
What else did you see in the artwork? Why their artwork? Why not their shoes? Why not their clothes? Why the artwork?
Well,
And why dolls? Why do you think?
Well, the dolls, as you can see from all the dolls, they all represent, they look like us. And, sorry, excuse me. And I'll also say that, because it's popular, really.
Can I add something in?
Yeah.
Earlier today, Jordan, when you came in, I asked you what was your favorite puppet or doll that was on exhibit. And you pointed to one and you told me why. So I think that's important to this conversation. Do you want to tell everyone what was your favorite?
So I picked that one because it kind of resembles me, same skin color, my hair, and yeah, I felt that it reminded me of myself.
Do you know who he is? Do you know the puppet's name?
I haven't really know.
He's Jamal from Brooklyn.
Okay.
Well, listen up. Good for you. I want to make her know. That's good, Jordan. That's good. What about you? You've been listening to everything. What did you pick up? Tell me your name first.
Amalia.
Oh, Amalia. Amalia, who identified the Jamaican doll. Was that you? Okay, you were sick and you still managed. So tell me, what did you pick up?
That every doll has like a unique feature, and
why are these people, why are these doll artists important in terms of cultural legacy? And how will you help them? How can you help them sustain, right, this is what we're talking about, cultural legacy and cultural sustainability. How can mind builders help them? What do you think you can do?
By preserving their art and having in the future to share with the people to come.
How would you do that?
By documenting them, basically.
Gotcha.
So like this is why we have the cameras and the phones all used to document the artists. And as I forgot what was your name again?
Naomi?
Yeah, Naomi. Her job is to make sure that these artifacts and arts stay for a very long time, so we can preserve the legacy.
That's hers, but what's yours?
Mine's to help them, really.
How are you gonna help them?
Well, I was an interviewer, so I learned more about their story and what they did.
Okay, you have to, now I'm asking you to take it to the next step. You have this story in your head. How can you advance this artistry? What could you all do to advance this artistry? It can stay in an archive. What are you gonna do to help them promote what they're doing?
I would say I like the museum.
Okay, what else? Amalia, what else? What else could you do?
I really don't know.
Think about it. What else could you do?
We could present, even like every semester when we have this program, we do a presentation of all the traditionalists that we interview and their work, and sometimes we bring a lot of them in to share with the community.
Okay. What is this young lady saying? What's your name?
Amy.
Amy. What else could you do to promote this art?
Probably like post it online. Probably like the art interviews.
Can you ask the artist, what could we do to help you? That's the other thing.
What can we do to help you guys?
Yeah, I like that, the online. Creating stories, yeah, promoting online, that's great. And creating stories and what you were saying. I'm sorry,
Go.
and like the videos that you did, like, that's great for us, you know, help promote.
That's actually great for the world to see you all working in interest to us all. So that when we close our eyes, there's another generation of folks that are, even if they're not doing it physically as artists, they know something about it, can tell somebody that it existed. A lot of stories are not kept because there's no one left to tell them. No one took enough interest to know, and to remember, and to make sure the next person remembered. And I also want to say, when you were talking, like when we were all young people, we didn't think anything great about our parents when they were doing it. We had to get to be a certain age and be like, oh wow, that was really useful, those things they taught us.
But the other thing is that audiences are changing. If you, as budding arts administrators or people who are promoting the idea of arts, audiences are changing. And it used to be that American mainstream audiences, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant audiences, who were patrons of big museums or theaters or whatever, they were the foundational income for those big organizations. Well, things have changed. We look different than those folk, number one, and their children didn't continue with the same legacy that they just did because their parents did, right? So there is great opportunity, number one, because we are the face, the voice, and the intent of a new audience. That's you, that's not us, that's you, right? So what are you gonna do with it? What does that mean? Does that mean that you recreate, you interrogate, disrupt, and recreate the structure? I don't know. doesn't mean that that's part of what you do, but another part of what you do is to continue the legacy of what you hear by uplifting it and making sure that it lives locked in memory for the future. You are a portal. We're in a transitional time. We're in a time of change. You're the change. You're the future, right?
Thank you.
Group shot?
What?
Laura
Oh,
has
group
to
shot.
go.
Let's get the group shot.
Okay.
She's up there signing something.
Okay.
Hi, ladies.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. I think this is the